In 70 CE, the Roman Empire destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem. For the Jewish people, this was a catastrophic existential threat. The centralized Supreme Court lost its physical home and its undisputed political authority. Look at this Roman relief of the temple's physical artifacts being carried away. The legal system had to transition immediately from a centralized, state-based apparatus to a decentralized, survival-based model. Rome understood how to dismantle a legal system. The empire systematically hunted down the judges, executing them to permanently sever the chain of legal ordination. Look at this buried hoard of Bar Kokhba coins. They are the frozen artifacts of a failed rebellion. When the Bar Kokhba revolt collapsed, it confirmed a devastating reality. Political sovereignty was not returning in their lifetimes. This created a severe constitutional tension. The society had to preserve a massive body of objective, unwritten law across scattered exile communities without triggering a permanent geographic schism. Under extreme pressure, the ancient system of legal preservation splintered into two distinct competing methodologies. The survival of the civilization now depended entirely on whether these two divergent constitutional frameworks could ever be reconciled. The first preservation track belonged to the biological dynasty of Hillel, the socio-political aristocrats of the court. At their head was the Nasi, or president. They maintained a deep conservatism regarding how the law functioned. Their transmission mechanism was absolute. The law passed strictly orally. They explicitly refused to anchor unwritten traditions in new texts. For over 1,000 years, Jewish law had lived off the page. It was an oral tradition, debated and passed down directly from mind to mind. When the minds holding that law are hunted, the law itself faces extinction. To survive permanent exile and continuous persecution, the system could not simply go into hiding. The architecture of the law itself had to adapt. The other relied on a radical open-source analytical transparency. Facing the threat of mass amnesia, Rabbi Akiva's disciples took drastic action. They began reverse engineering the oral tradition, anchoring the memorized laws permanently to specific verses of the written Bible. This work resulted in the Halakhic corpus, a body of legal literature produced by Rabbi Akiva's most advanced students. These manuscripts show how they structured the law, foundational texts like the Matnitin by Rabbi Meir, alongside the Sifra, the Sifrei, and the Mekilta. These were not casual notes. They were precise, reproducible records of every legal tradition they had inherited. Decades later, the Roman persecution paused. Under Emperor Antoninus Pius, a brief window of geopolitical stability opened for the Jewish people. Born into this exact window of peace was a singular historical figure, Rabbi Judah the Prince. Rabbi Judah was the absolute biological apex of the royal dynasty. He held the presidency of the court, the immense wealth, and the strictly guarded oral traditions of his forefathers. Simultaneously, he had been trained directly by the surviving titans of Rabbi Akiva school. He was an elite disciple of the outsiders. For the first time in history, the absolute executive authority of the royals and the extreme intellectual rigor of the outsiders were fused inside a single sovereign mind. Recognizing the peace would not last, Rabbi Judah initiated an architectural project to construct a unified physical constitutional codex that would end generational disputes. Rabbi Judah the Prince was the only figure in history equipped to merge these divergent methodologies without having his authority rejected by either faction. To build a unified national codex, Rebbe first had to manage a chaotic landscape of competing scholarly notes. To organize this chaos, the architect required a singular foundational framework to serve as his blueprint. He selected the texts authored by Rabbi Meir, the star student of Rabbi Akiva's academic network. Rabbi Meir's formulations possessed exact traits. They were precise, brief, and strictly categorized, engineered for rigorous transmission. This specific textual brevity was mandatory. The society still relied heavily on oral memorization, so the written law had to be easily recitable. This choice carried a monumental halakhic consequence. The physical architecture of the Mishnah was built strictly on the outsider methodology of Rabbi Akiva. Rebbe expanded upon this base. He deliberately included minority opinions and dissenting views alongside the majority rulings to create a comprehensive legal record. By utilizing Rabbi Meir's texts as the scaffolding, Rebbe successfully transformed the localized, fragmented notes of the outsider scholars into the permanent physical backbone of Jewish law. The final product of Rebbe's project was the Mishnah. We can see his synthesis at work by examining its very first tractate, dealing with the evening Shema prayer. The analytical challenge is locating the exact DNA of both historical tracts within this single primary text. This is Mishnah Berachot 1:1. It operates as a deliberate, highly engineered structure. The first clause presents the text-based scholarly view of Rabbi Eliezer regarding the exact timing of the Shema. This is immediately followed by the counter-opinion, the textual view of the sages. These opening clauses are explicitly track 2. They represent the rigorous, text-anchored methodology of the outsiders forming the base. Then comes the critical pivot. Rebbe seamlessly injects the ruling of his own ancestor, Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel's ruling existed in no prior scholarly texts. It was the pure, unwritten, aristocratic tradition of track 1. Rebbe permanently anchors this unwritten aristocratic tradition by recording a specific precedent-setting story of his grandfather's sons returning from a feast. In this single paragraph, two competing constitutional philosophies are welded together in real time. Rebbe executed a final logistical maneuver. Utilizing his vast wealth, he mass-published copies of this new codex across the land. The text was received by the scattered global communities and localized courts. This synthesis provided a path toward haskama, national consent. By recognizing the text-anchored traditions of the scholars and the inherited customs of the dynasty, Rebbe built a document that major factions recognized as authoritative. This total unification stood in sharp contrast to the prior century of severe methodological fracture and chaotic dispute. The legacy of this architecture is a portable, rational constitution capable of surviving endless geographic displacement. By anchoring unwritten traditions into a standardized text, Rabbi Judah created a legal continuum that allowed scattered communities to maintain a unified identity despite centuries of displacement.